VelociCoaster is an Intamin multi-launch roller coaster located at Universal Studios Islands of Adventure in Orlando, Florida. This immersively themed coaster has thrilled park guests since it opened in 2021, and I got the chance to ride it during spring break last year. Before riding VelociCoaster, I had pretty high expectations for it. I heard enthusiasts say it's one of few perfect roller coasters, as well as others stating that it was their favorite ride ever. Were my expectations met? Let's find out in this review. As stated in the intro, VelociCoaster is very well themed. However, because I only had to wait around 25 minutes for it on my one back row ride, I walked through 75% of the queue without paying too much attention to the theming details. The main part of the queue I was able to take in was the part after the metal detectors. You can't find any footage of this section because all of your belongings, including phones and cameras, will have needed to go in the free double-sided lockers before you go through the metal detectors. As a side note, the double-sided lockers are very convenient. It's pretty easy to put your stuff in and get your stuff back as you exit the ride. But back to the theming. The gist of the final pre-show features Chris Pratt's character in the Jurassic World films, Owen Grady, disapproving of Ryder's decision to ride VelociCoaster, as he thinks it's too dangerous to be that close to the dinosaurs. Even though he cited some good reasons, he didn't convince me not to ride it. All jokes aside, the pre-show elements and the queue of VelociCoaster were done very well. Part of me wishes I had a longer line to wait in so I can take all the theming in, but I value the ride experience more than the theming itself, so soaking in more theming wouldn't change my opinion of VelociCoaster too much. Speaking of the ride experience, let's take a look at VelociCoaster's layout. The ride begins with a brief launch almost immediately out of the station, followed by an Immelman. Next, riders twist into a dive loop. After a couple of swift turns, riders zip into an off-axis airtime hill, and continue with some more low-to-the-ground turns. As riders twist throughout the Raptor Paddock, they pass by two of the raptors in one section and two in another. You can hear the dinosaurs roar as this happens, which is a nice touch of theming that I didn't get to mention earlier. After swooping around the paddock some more, riders take a right-hand turn and kickstart into the second half of the ride with a boost launch that speeds them up to 70 miles per hour. Riders then climb over the 155-foot tall top hat and plunge back down into the ground during the 80-degree drop. Following the drop, VelociCoaster flips you upside down with a stretched-out zero-G stall and banks to the right into the next element, a wave turn, which passes over the guest pathway. Riders continue turning right until an off-axis airtime hill whips you to the left, and then back to the right. Staying low to the ground, riders continue to turn right and pass over the guest pathway again, before making its finale. VelociCoaster concludes with a quick pop of airtime, the one-of-a-kind Mosasaurus Roll, and a snappy right-to-left twisted airtime hill that leads you into the brake run. With just over a minute's worth of ride time, there is certainly a lot to unpack with this awesome layout. As I alluded to in the layout description, VelociCoaster has two very distinct halves. The first half I would consider to be the warm-up to the second half. The first launch is definitely thrilling, but the acceleration isn't going to take your breath away. It's still got enough kick to get your adrenaline going. The back-to-back inversions next are really fun. The Immelman's got some decent whip from the back row as you twist out of it. This is also a moment where you might have to put your hands down quickly because going through the rockwork gives an insane head chopper effect. The dive loop following is a little bit better than the Immelman, as I felt like you go through it a little bit faster. The off-axis hill provides good ejector airtime, and the turn leading out of it gives you another head chopper effect through the rockwork. The following turns before the second launch are fun, but not incredibly memorable. Going into the ride, I didn't know the exact POV, and even after I rode it, I couldn't tell you from memory each right and left turn in the Raptor Paddock. Even though these bending turns may not have been too memorable, that doesn't mean they weren't fun. They remind me of a slightly more intense version of Big Bear Mountain, and I enjoy that ride very much. The first half of VelociCoaster knows its role, and it doesn't blow your socks off. It leaves that job for the second half. The second half of the ride starts with the second launch, which is where the ride really kicks into high gear. You get pushed back into your seat significantly more than the first launch, making the second considerably more thrilling. It changes the tone from the first half, and sets the tone for the second. As you crest over the top hat, you get some awesome ejector airtime whipping over the drop, especially in the back row. Now, I've heard some enthusiasts say that the next element, the zero-G stall, doesn't have enough hang time because of how fast you go through it. Although on paper it may seem like the case, I'd have to disagree. I felt like I was going to fall straight down out of my seat, but thankfully the restraint kept me up. I wouldn't say this hang time is outstanding like some moments on Copperhead Strike, but I wouldn't say it's almost non-existent like some enthusiasts. I'd say it's in the middle, a pretty good moment of hang time. In any case though, the twists going in and out of it whip you around pretty good, keeping up with the intensity. The wave turn following the stall is another fun moment, but probably the worst moment of the second half besides the right-hand turn just under it. You get a quick pop of sideways airtime, but it's nowhere close to the wave turns of Lightning Rod or Twisted Cyclone. Either way, it's still really fun, and considering it's one of the weaker moments of the second half, just goes to show how amazing VelociCoaster is. The off-axis twist after the wave turn is yet another intense moment. I was sitting on the right side of the train, so I really got yanked when the train flipped to the left. This twist was definitely the best moment of ejector airtime throughout the ride, and one of my favorite moments. As I mentioned earlier, the right-hand turn after the off-axis twist is the worst part of the second half, but the train still takes the turn with great speed, so I wouldn't say it's a boring moment. It gives you a brief second to prepare yourself for one of the best roller coaster finales ever. The small ejector hill is a great start to the finale, as you get a really good pop of air, but I'd say this hill's roll is more or less to set up for the best moment of the ride, the Mosasaurus Roll. This roll is relentless. Going through it at over 50 miles an hour at this point of the ride is insane. Additionally, you're traveling over the water as you twist through it, which is truly an incredible touch to this already wild inversion. Throughout the roll, you are constantly thrown out of your seat. It's like if an off-axis airtime hill went 360 degrees around. You experience so much lateral forces and hang time throughout the Mosasaurus Roll. As of now, this is my favorite inversion of all time. It is truly an experience you need to feel for yourself to understand how amazing it is. Finally, the off-axis hill gives you another great moment of ejector airtime. Although not quite as good as the previous in the second half, it is better than the off-axis hill in the first half. The twisted airtime is a great final moment before you conclude your ride on VelociCoaster. A couple of final thoughts before I give VelociCoaster a final score. First, the coaster's sequence of elements is done perfectly. Each transition from element to element is so smooth, and the ride continues to ramp up in intensity. A problem I have with other coasters is when they start off with their best moments too soon, and the rest of the ride feels somewhat dull because of it. I think of rides like Cyclops and Wolverine Wildcat that have this issue. VelociCoaster should be the poster child of sequency. Even though the first half is significantly less thrilling, it really allows the second half to be the superstar. Also, VelociCoaster is extremely comfortable as well. The track couldn't be smoother, and their strengths fit very well and don't restrict you of getting any airtime. Although these two things may be a given on any new-aged Intamin, I thought I'd make a note of it anyway. Finally, the setting of the ride is just icing on the cake. The Raptor Paddock itself is very immersive, and it's really fun to slither in and around it. The second half is in the very middle of the park, where everyone can see. Passing over pathways and water, VelociCoaster presents itself very well to both riders experiencing the ride itself and the guests watching the trains fly by. An A+ job to Universal for making the setting of VelociCoaster spectacular. So, it's time to give VelociCoaster a final score, and today, as you may have guessed it, I'm giving it a perfect score of 10 out of 10. This is literally the only roller coaster where I do not have anything bad to say about it. It's got a perfect length, setting, sequence of elements, theme, restraint system, queue, and on and on. And after so many minutes of talking about it, I agree with those who say this is a perfect roller coaster. There is truly nothing wrong with this ride. VelociCoaster will always be cemented in my top 3 favorite roller coasters. I think once I get on it more and more, it will probably become my definite favorite, but I'm glad to say that with my one and only impression of this coaster, it has left enough of an impact on me to grant this coaster elite status. Now, I've laid out all of my thoughts I have on this perfect coaster, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. Do you think it's a flawless coaster as well? If not, what gripes do you have about VelociCoaster? I always love reading and responding to your comments, so feel free to post your thoughts down below. Also, if you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, as it really helps grow the channel. And if you want to keep up with more roller coaster content, make sure you subscribe to Coaster Squabble. If you've made it this far, thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next one.